Welcome back, and now we're going to focus on the case study that's involved around this topic, which is the Jarrow March, or the Jarrow Crusade, which is probably a better phrase for it. Now, the reason why it's called the Jarrow Crusade instead of the Jarrow March is that they really wanted to distance themselves from the hunger marches which we talked about previously, because the purpose of the Jarrow March and the aim of it, and it's something that we really need to focus on, isn't for government handouts. It's for the government to get involved and create jobs in this area so the people of Jarrow could, get themselves back into a situation where they were economically okay. So let's look at the past exams. In 2023 and in 2021, Jarrow was named in the question. Something to the effect of what impact did Jarrow have on the economic aspect of Britain in the 1920s and 30s. And it was linked in with other things such as John Maynard Keynes and Winston Churchill. Also, Jarrow was come up, not named, but in economics questions about Britain and Germany during the interwar years, where you could bring in quite a lot about Jarrow into that answer. So today we're going to have a look at just an overview of the reasons why the people of Jarrow felt the need to protest. And the first thing that we need to look at is that it's an example of the industrial decline faced by many northern cities that were based around heavy industry. Heavy industry is really important when you are fighting a war, such as during World War I, but not necessarily when you are in peacetime. So you don't need as many ships, you don't need as many you don't need as much work happening in your steel mills. You don't need as much mining. So these heavy industry, heavy areas, they're the ones that get hit the most. So the rate of unemployment is at 72%. And like we said earlier, is that in these areas, it is localized where the unemployment is, because across the board, Britain is at maybe 20-25% unemployment. But in particular northern towns, it can be up as far as 70 and 80% unemployment. Simply because the kinds of jobs that were needed 10 years previously, or 15 years previously, aren't needed now. That's why these people are out of work, and there's knock-on effects because of that. So the shipyards and the steelworks, but it's mainly the shipyards which causes the major damage, closes with a loss of 8,000 jobs. It was said that the only jobs that were pretty much available in Jarrow was working in the railways, because that was things going through Jarrow. That's the state of Jarrow at this point. So what's the living conditions like? Well, it's awful. You have poverty, you have overcrowding, you have disease. One of the things, there's also an element of starvation going on at this point. There's stories of children being told by their parents that they have to stay in bed all day because it's warmer and they'll need less food. That's the situation in Britain in the 1930s. When you think about it like that, it makes things a bit kind of strange. That's maybe something that you might want to hear about maybe of a couple of hundred years ago in some poverty-stricken place across Europe or around the world. But no, this is supposed to be the most industrially developed country in the world, or at least one of them, and you have people being told they have to keep their kids in bed because that's the only way that they can conserve energy. So, because of the need for money to help those not working, taxes needed to be raised for those who were, which creates a sense of resentment. Like if you're lucky enough to maintain your job and to still have a job, people a lot of times feel, well, why should I support the other people who don't have these things? Why is it my responsibility? Well, in a socialist country, that's what happens. And Britain is, it is socialist, and it's edging towards being more socialist after the war with the introduction of the NHS and the welfare state. But this brings difficulties for the people who are still in employment, because if your taxes go up, well, then it lowers your standard of living as well. It also leads to means testing. So the means testing means that before you are given any sort of assistance by the government, one of the things that they have to do is to see how much money you have. So if you were lucky enough to hold on to a lot of your kind of savings, and then you lost your job, the government expected you to fall back on those savings first. Even if there was one income coming into a household, so you could have maybe 7 or 8 people in a house, but one person had a job, it meant that no assistance was coming in. And the people who were in charge of this was the Unemployment Assistance Board, or the UAB. And it sounds like a nice term, the unemployment, you don't have a job, assistance, so they're here to assist you and help you. But in reality, they were there to means test people to see if they were entitled to it. And very few people were entitled to full benefits at this time because Britain didn't have as much money. Compare that again to how Germany is. There wasn't any of this going on, or there wasn't much of this, if any, going on in Germany in 1936, where you had near full employment. So there's a major perception that the government wasn't doing anything to relieve the suffering of the people of Jarrow. And if there's a perception, it's usually because of something that's happening. It doesn't come from nowhere. And the reason why it's coming in is that the people of Jarrow are looking at the devastation, the economic devastation of this place, of the poverty, of the disease, of the premature deaths of people and deaths of children, and saying, well, how bad is this place? So the march itself is to highlight this plight, to say to the people who make decisions, look how bad this place is. And now we need to do something to fix it. We're not looking for a handout in terms of like the hunger marches, because it's not a hunger march, and this distinction is really important. The people of Jarrow want jobs, not food. But they want to tell the people, especially in the south, just how bad the situation is in the north. Now, one of the leaders, if you flick onto the next page and go on to page 46, you'll see a quote from Jarrow MP Ellen Wilkinson, and the name of the book that she wrote was called The Town That Was Murdered. Not the town that died, because died would imply is a passive voice, because that just implies that something happened and the thing died. It could be natural causes. If you say the town that was murdered, it makes it sound like somebody made a decision to end the life of this town, and that's more of an active voice when it comes to that. If you ever want to look at newspaper headlines, the difference between passive and active voices, it comes across quite well. If somebody died versus somebody was killed versus somebody was murdered, they all mean different things. So when she says the town that was murdered, she says Jarrow was utterly stagnant. There was no work. Utterly stagnant. The economy was going nowhere. There was no chance of improvement. It was pretty much at its lowest ebb. People had to bring up their children in bad houses on too little food, and their resistance is lowered, and if any sort of disease comes along, they suffer massively because of it. Often some of the kids actually dying. That is Jarrow. And Jarrow is an example. It epitomizes all of these towns in the north of England. So the men and the women of Jarrow get together and decide, well, do you know what we need to do? We need to have a crusade. The word crusade that's kind of religious connotations. If you think back to the Crusaders of the Christians who travelled to the Holy Land in the kind of early part of the 1000s, 1100s and 1200s, who went over to that Holy Land to try to, take back that Holy Land for Christendom. There's an element of, we need to do this and we have to stand up for ourselves. It's a crusade. We're fighting against this, something that's bigger than us. It's not a march. Yes, you'll be marching from A to B, but it's not necessarily a protest. It's more, we want something to happen and we need your help to do it. That is why they marched to London. You need to look at the situation in Jarrow and figure out, well, why would those people feel the need to act the way they do? What is the need for them to go to London, march all the way there, travel through all the towns along the way, collecting support and names and their petitions as they go? That's what we need to look at. And that's what we will look at in the next couple of lessons. I'll see you for the next one.